your boy Rufus. We're back at it again with another installment of the Rufus Rundown. Season 5, episode 29. Crazy to believe that we have made it this far, and I've actually done this many episodes in a calendar year, but I guess I was really looking to get to 52. I mean, it's still a very, very much a new all-time high. Where it is there... I don't really know if there's traditionally an opportunity for me to get 52, but hey, I've called games on ESPN Plus and SN Plus so far this year. So hey, we have grown as an individual and on the podcast as well. So welcome back. And today earlier featured on the Fumble Rooski podcast, which we had Chris Kostic on recently, who is a member of that Fumble Rooski podcast. Had him on recently and was able to go back now and join them, and a lot of good football talk, obviously. Fumble Rooski podcast, pretty football specific. I'll be talking a lot of NFL on my own podcast as well. We're responding to some calls in text. We're going to talk about some of the injuries going on, a general look at the NFL. I had a lot of live reactions on the Fumble Rooski podcast to a lot of the trades that were going down. Nothing crazy and too in-depth. Let me preface it by saying that with the trade deadline, none of these deals really changed my complete opinion of some of these teams. Like, they weren't, like, true blockbusters. And the trade that I want to get into right after NFL 3 Up, 3 Down, we're getting to NFL 3 Up, 3 Down as well, is the James Harden trade. And then we're going to take a look at the World Series a little bit. So it's going to be a bounce-around type of episode. But mainly, we're going to be heavy on the football here. So NFL and the Achilles tear. Kirk Cousins goes down with the Achilles tear, and it's been a change with the injuries these players are suffering, and the non-contact injuries are up. And I've said it before and said it again about movement patterns and go to training and everything, and you can go above and beyond and do the research and how much I've had to say about that, how much I've believed in that style of training, so on and so forth. There's a lot to break down when it comes to that, but you know, the Kirk Cousins one's seriously unfortunate considering he's in a contract year. He's leading the NFL in touchdown passes, been an incredibly productive quarterback, and since he's been in that O'Connell system, has certainly been as impressive as well. But obviously going down with the Achilles injury, now they went from 1-4 to 4-4. They started off 0-3. They were picking up steam, and again, it comes down to like they care about player safety and hitting up top, right? But like, you know, my initial reaction to all that too, other than the movement pattern stuff, which I'll give you some statistics on it too. Achilles tendon ruptures in the NFL. 2020 there was a total of 17 Achilles ruptures. 2021 there was a total of 16 Achilles ruptures. 2022 there was a total of 18, and now by week 8 of this season there's 18. So 67% of those have been on grass, so more than turf, so it's not exactly the artificial field argument. 78% non-contact. So part of my initial reaction is you don't want players getting hit up top, right? You don't want players getting crushed in the head and guys are going lower, and when we're wrapping and rolling up on guys, it certainly changes the effects in the body. So you're not getting rattled up top. But I'm not trying to compare all these ligament and joint injuries to the fact that we'd rather have CTE and concussions than these ligament and joint injuries. That's not what I'm saying. Like, I don't think anybody wants injuries at all. But in the reality of, yes, like, this is going to, like, how this is taking place now is obviously going to affect this more. Like, players are still going to get hurt. It's still football is still very much a violent game. And if you're, not putting all your body weight in a quarterback, that means you're wrapping and rolling. And if he gets caught up in a bunch of bodies, might roll the ankle a certain way, might pop an Achilles, might tear an ACL, valve gets to the knee. First of all, movement patterns are just compromised. Like, we're just loading pressure into our feet and through our joints and through our ligaments, like, just the wrong way. It's just how it's happening, how it's going down. There's really nothing you can, like, say to prove it otherwise. Like, people just have compromised movement patterns from the triple extension lifting and from the training programs we're going through, and how players have been taught to lift and move their entire careers. Like, it's just how it is. It's just these injuries are going to take place, these non-contact injuries. But like I said, on top of that, like this whole player safety movement to prevent concussions and go low, less hits to the head are going to happen, and we're going to have, less dirty hits and people in the secondary getting laid out, and maybe less spinal and neck injuries. But if we're wrestling guys to the ground and awkward tackles happen, these are going to happen too. Like, it's a violent game. Like, things like this are going to happen. It is a physical sport. And even on the tackles, like, you can't, there's only so much you can do with how you plant your feet and stuff. And obviously there's still parts of the movement pattern that will help out with that. But there's another part of it too where you're going to see this type of destruction of those joints and ligaments. Take Gronk, for example. He tore his ACL against the Browns. Like, when they absolutely bashed into him, right into his knee. Like, first of all, you couldn't hit Gronk up high. And he said, basically, he came out when it happened and said, I don't want guys going low. Like, I'd rather you go up top. And a lot of people, like, running backs as well, too. Maybe, of course, it's always tracking the near hip, and that's the new form of tackling, and low man wins, and understand all of that. But it has changed, like the way that we tackle, the way that we move, the way that these athletes are taking care of business, how they're doing it. This is going to happen. You might have less head injuries, but it's still a violent game. Things are going to happen. So if you're tackling differently, where you're keeping the head out of it, you might get this more awkward wrestling. And again, Gronk was a guy that said, like, I'd rather you not do that. I'd rather you hit me up high. Probably couldn't tackle Gronk up high. And secondly, some people might say that Gronk didn't have much to protect up in the noggin area up top, but it's either here nor there. Julian Edelman said he's very intelligent football guys out there. But yeah, overall, just a really, really unfortunate injury to Kirk Cousins. You continue to see those injuries go up, the non-contact injuries go up, and it's something that you don't like to see. But like I said, overall, like, this is what's going to happen. It's still a violent game. You're still trying to protect players, right? You're trying to protect their heads and protect their well-being long-term. Well, this is also a portion of that. It's a guy in his contract year. They've since traded for Josh Dobbs, but again, it's a guy's in a contract year. So I don't know how long this is going to go into the next season, what he's going to get paid, who's going to be willing to work with him. Because, again, as good as he's been this season and as good as decent of a quarterback as I think he is, do I think that Kirk Cousins is the answer there? No, I don't think he's the problem in Minnesota, but I don't think he's the answer either. So I think that you're going to go a different route, and I don't know who's really going to take a shot on him considering now the injury. Can he bounce back from it? Certainly not going to be getting the contract that I think he probably would have gotten from some team that was desperate for a quarterback. So an unfortunate situation for him. A religious guy, a hard worker, a disciplined person. Seems like a good teammate. Seems like a lot of his teammates like him. Fortunately, I'm not going to kick a guy while he's down, but never won anything. Never won big games. In terms of how it went in prime time, never really panned out for him in the big moments. So, that's one thing. But that has nothing to do with the injury itself. It's just like how much you're really losing. Josh Dobbs, he's serviceable, but it's not a Super Bowl team. I don't think it was even with Kirk Cousins healthy. So I think it allows them, it honestly could be more of a little bit of a blessing for the Vikings to be able to approach it from the perspective of, like, now we can start to evaluate what the future is without Kirk, because now kind of answers that question for him. Like, hey, do you keep him around? Do we not keep him? Like, do we keep him? Do we not keep him? Do we pay him a boatload more of money? Now you can kind of approach it from the perspective of, this decision has made it for us. How do we move forward? Who's the next guy in charge? A lot of young weapons in the receiver core there. You have a pretty strong O-line. Flores continuing to coach that defense and trying to build that defense up. You have the pieces in place, I think, to make a run, especially being in a weaker division. The Lions have been very good, but the Packers and Bears don't look like they're going to be functional at all in the near future. I think you're a quarterback away. How do you find that quarterback and keep those pieces around? Because you're going to have if you draft a guy, you have a cheap quarterback. So maybe a cheaper quarterback to build around. You have expensive weapons around him, but that's okay because you're not paying your quarterback yet. I think that is it kind of might be a blessing in disguise for the Vikings, but they have a very tight window where they can make this work too, so they have to make the right decisions when it comes to personnel department and who they draft. So certainly a question mark for them to answer, and certainly an unfortunate situation for Kirk Cousins, but I want to leave with that in terms of what I see out of, like, the situation itself and the injuries overall and how that's going. Yeah. Not ideal for Kirk Cousins, but also this is something that I think you're going to see trending, considering how they're teaching players to tackle, how they are tackling, and the head injuries and player safety as well. Next up, we're going to move into the voicemails. We're going to move on to the phone lines. I got one caller this week. We're going to give a response to it. Again, please give us a call on the show. Leave us a voicemail. It doesn't have to be just towards prompted questions either. It can be towards anything. So like any type of your sports takes, not anything. I'm not here taking the anything phone call line, but at the end of the day, like there's a lot that I'd be willing to respond to in terms of the sports world. So please be sure to be on the lookout for that and give us a call. Let me pull up the number real quick for you guys as well. 508-657-4717 is the number. So give that a call, 508-657-4717. You can leave text and voicemails there. Well, you can message me on any of the forums of social media at Rufus Rundown, and then the Rufus Rundown for TikTok and else. The Facebook page is the Rufus Rundown, and then the website as well, which I'll be working on getting some features for that installed as well. But overall, that is, again, the number. That is 508-657-4717 to reach the Rufus Rundown. And we'll respond to your calls in here. So we're going to give this first one a call. Buddy Wade gave me a call once again. Big friend of the show, the Sauce Man, and gave us a call. We'll take a listen now on the Rufus Rundown phone line.
What up, Lucas? This is Wade. It's been a while since I've given my reactions on some things.
Welcome back.
My thoughts on the Miami Dolphins, I feel like they're honestly frauds.
Ooh.
Look at who they've defeated and look at who they've lost to. I don't think Miami can keep up with all the top-notch teams. Miami themselves going up against KC, Buffalo. I could see them even losing to Jacksonville.
I'm going to stop it there real quick because like they did take a tough one to Buffalo. KC's going to be hard. I mean, that's just obviously a team. I think they have more receiver talent than KC, but yeah, I do think that all things considered that they haven't played their tougher competition to the level that you would like out of a contending team. I completely agree with that. Obviously started off with a 3-game win streak. The loss of the Bills was not ideal. Then you beat the Giants, the Panthers, lose to a tough team, the Eagles, but then you beat the Patriots. Once again, you continue to do that. I mean, the big 70-20 game over the Broncos certainly inflates a lot of their statistics. It certainly caught a lot of people's eyes in terms of just what we thought of this team. And overall, I still think they're a legit team. Again, Chiefs coming up. Then in a soft spot with the Raiders. You have a Jets team that's been playing really well in defense. And then Saleh, who I think has an idea of the McDaniels system himself. Commanders, Titans. Like, it's not the strongest schedule by any means. I mean, you get a tough one to finish with the Ravens and the Bills. The Cowboys, Ravens, and Bills. The tough finish to their season. But overall, yes, the strength of schedule has not. And then them losing to two of the better teams that they're gonna see throughout the season. Not ideal. They're gonna see the Bills again, so how they readjust in that matter, yes. But also, like, don't sleep on Jacksonville either in terms of a team that I think they can beat. Like, Jacksonville's, I think, a Super Bowl sleeper. Easy for me to say. As well, I'll say that 3 times fast. But yeah, I mean, like, I could see them losing to Jacksonville, but that's not a knock on Miami. I think that's just more of, like, I think credit to Jacksonville and what I think they're going to be. But anyways, I'll continue to listen to the call here.
Honestly, maybe even Baltimore. And I've even told my family beforehand, my bold prediction for the AFC Championship, if everyone stays healthy, I think it's going to be Ravens and Jaguars.
Yes. If Lamar Jackson stays healthy, absolutely yes.
I just feel like that they just have too much to lose at this point. The Dolphins, I think, I'm not a fan of their defense. I like their offense, obviously, with Hill, Waddle, Mostert. Tua's been having an MVP season. He very well could finish in the top 3.
So could Tyreek. Tyreek can finish up there, too. We talked about it in the Fumble Brewski podcast. Again, I'll have all that linked in the description. Big thanks for them having me on. But, yeah, obviously, Tyreek Hill, Tua Tagovailoa, Waddle, obviously good. They get Jalen Ramsey back in the secondary, pairing him with Xavier Howard, so that's a plus for them. But, yeah, the defense is certainly going to be a little more suspect than what they have built up in their offense.
I am just not a fan of their defense, man. If they can shape up on defense, we'll see a different story. But as of right now, I can see the Dolphins just be a bunch of frauds right now. But answering your other question, though, involving who's the scariest team, don't be sleeping on my Denver Broncos now, because the Kansas City Chiefs, I think, is going to be a huge momentum shift for us. and heading into the bye week and then playing Buffalo Week 10. If the Broncos can win Week 10 against
Buffalo's
Buffalo,
a beatable team.
I'm
no
not
matter
saying
what.
we're going to make the playoffs, but I feel like that just adds a lot more pressure to other teams. Let me know what you think, brother. Thank you.
Well, like the Chargers and Raiders aren't going to make it harder for you in that division, and the Jets, I think, right now at 4-3, like so much quarterback talent. And Russell Wilson really has been at fault. He's top 5 in a lot of legitimate passing categories, and of course, it was not going to be an overnight thing for Sean Payton. I mean, maybe it was pitched to everybody as an overnight thing, and of course, it came out at a very slow start. But yeah, it's a huge victory over Kansas City. I think it breaks a streak of 17 losses in a row to the Chiefs dating back to 2015. Impressive. Impressive win. They've been trending in the right direction since that big loss to Miami. I think overall, it was tough. It's been tough. It was tough early on. Starting off again 0-3. We know the statistics worth. Then you beat the Bears. Then you continue to lose to the Jets and the Chiefs. And you had a home game against the Jets. You lose. And those are the Zach Wilson-led Jets. But they've been able to rattle off wins against the Packers and Chiefs. The defense kind of sorted itself out, which has been taking a while. And Russell Wilson hasn't been, truthfully, that bad. So they've lost a lot of close games. They lost the first 2 weeks by a combined 3 points. And then you have the Dolphins who blow them out of the water. They get a tight win against the Bears, and they come from behind effort. Then you lose to the Jets, you lose to the Chiefs, but you get the Chiefs on the second go around after defeating the Packers. I mean, can I say playoff team? No, but if the defense is not like abysmal and Russell Wilson continues to play at the level he's at, yeah, I can see them making noise and maybe not being like a sleeper team overall, but a sleeper playoff team, I think for sure. So overall, Wade, thank you so much for the call. Take a look at the recent week. I just want to preface all my NFL talk with saying that football in New York should be banned. 24 total punts was ridiculous. I would say that I like that game was disgusting to watch, but considering how much red zone I watch, I didn't really watch much of it. They didn't really score. Nobody did any 24 punts. I mean, hey, listen, I won my pool this week, and the Jets covered, came back to cover. It's -2.5. Love it for me on that sheet. But 24 punts, we need to ban football. Give me 2 XFL teams. Like, can we do relegation here? Can we do something like the Premier League, and can we relegate these teams? I mean, it's ridiculous. 24 total punts. I talked about the Football Risky podcast as well. Terrible. I just was awful. Wasn't football. Was just, I don't even know. Rugby? But, it moves the Jets to 4-3, and I'm sure they'll take it with Zach Wilson in there and the injury to Aaron Rodgers. Sure, they'll take it. But good Lord, was it disgusting how just the Giants just banned football in New York. We should just almost like it set football back 40 years. Ridiculous. But Bryce Young also got his first victory, number 1 pick versus number 2 pick. The Panthers, hey, they get their first victory. Bryce Young gets the first one under his belt. The situation that he came into in Carolina, obviously not a good one. But we'll see how Bryce Young, it's been an incredibly rough start for him, but under a lot of pressure. But good to see him, especially considering like the drive they had to go on late too. Good win for Bryce Young and the Panthers. And again, touching upon just pretty much everything. We're going to get into the trade deadline next. Not anything too in-depth, but I am going to break down the moves that happened. NFL 3 Up, 3 Down coming up as well. The James Harden trade and my reaction, and a World Series update. All that next. Stay tuned on the Rufus Rundown podcast. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Rufus Rundown. I had to take a little step away there while I was recording, and it actually kind of works out in my favor for this episode because, A, it's quite cold in here, so I get the sweatshirt on, so that hoodie on, that's good. And also, well, I mean, it's not positive in the sense that someone got fired, but it's just positive in the sense that I can react to it now, and I have not missed this news cycle, and that is Josh McDaniels being fired, along with almost a big turnover in the majority of that coaching staff there. But it's something that we talked about, once again, a little bit in the Fumblerooski podcast. But yeah, they fired Dave Ziegler, Josh McDaniels, and I woke up to the news. came out of nowhere because there's a lot of his contract and left. And, of course, Davis has stood behind them pretty much the entire time, but it's been rocky. You can tell that there's been culture issues there, performance issues, obviously, considering where they're sitting. I mean, they're second to last in yards per game, last in rushing yards per game, and then in terms of points per game as well, they are quite low. They are bottom 3. They are the third worst team in the league in terms of points per game. Only in front of his former Patriots and the New York Giants. So, not good. Not good. Obviously Antonio Pierce is set to be the interim, so it's a little bit more of a younger charge kind of going forward. But the GM too, because obviously, the whole Denver debacle that came with Josh McDaniels, I never truthfully could put on him because they drafted Tebow, that was Elway's guy. They went with, and they were quick to get rid of him. They've had the quarterback, right? But this time they went after his guy. He wanted Garoppolo. They went after his quarterback, and it has not played out. Regardless of injuries and stuff like that, they can say, if he was on the field, maybe. No, we're not gonna have that conversation. We're not gonna have a conversation because it was his pick. This was well known. It's not like he just started getting hurt. This is well known that Jimmy Garoppolo had struggled with staying on the field. So this is something you knew coming in. So again, Mark Davis came out and said, after much thought about what the Raiders need to do to move forward, I have decided to part ways with Josh and Dave. I want to thank them for their hard work and wish them and their families nothing but the best. Also, with a little bit of a kicker of the fact that there's millions of dollars of the contracts probably left owed to these guys. He didn't really elaborate on the whole thing, but again, the linebackers coach Antonio Pierce going to be the interim head coach. Champ Kelly will serve as the interim GM, and I think Hardegreed will be promoted to offensive coordinator, the quarterbacks coach. So the players were certainly involved in a lot. That's been the report. The players were involved in the decision to move on. It's been nothing but a mess since. Gruden had showed some promise there, but of course everything went on with the emails and that stuff being leaked out, and Bisaccia came in and went to the playoffs, and they go with McDaniels after that. And again, I wasn't a big fan of hiring an interim head coach, considering they don't typically work out, but they stayed away from that as well, which I thought was good, but I didn't know if McDaniels was the answer, and again, he bet on his guys and has not worked out by any means. Again, the dysfunction is clear. You lose to a D2 quarterback, and Bajent, this Lions loss as well. It's his first start. Former D2 quarterback, now his first start. Comes out and beats you. They moved on from Derek Carr in kind of a strange way. They come in with Garoppolo. That's not worked out. Now he's been hurt a lot. Now he's not only not worked out, he's going to be benched. Even more so just ability-wise. They're going with Aiden O'Connell, who really hasn't shown you an incredible amount. So it's certainly a wild time in Vegas, as it normally is and has been. They haven't really used Hunter Renfrow much. It's been nothing but dysfunction for them there, and I think it's present in the screen. We're going based off of reports and stuff, so it's not like I'm physically there to tell you. But I think it's clear that there's some serious dysfunction going on there, and the Raiders continue to run through coaches. I think they're 12th. It would be the 8th different head coach, interim or regular, for the Raiders since Davis took control for Al Davis. And I think overall in the last 20 years, this will be, I think, the 12th coach in the last 20 years. I think if that sounds about right. Yeah, dysfunction. So overall, never came together, and I don't know what it's going to be, but obviously, younger former player taking over now. It might shock the locker room a little bit. We'll see. These are one of my 3 down teams as well, so it kind of covers this for 3 up, 3 down, which is coming right around the corner. So yeah, they're one of my 3 down teams, so that's a tease there. So pretty much covering that now, considering that reaction. So it covers that, and then we'll give you the other 2 3 down as well, and then we'll have the 3 ups. But I also want to talk about the NFL trade deadline and everything that went on there. I'm not going to be going through each trade individually, like I've said before earlier in the show, and even more so now. I don't think any of these moves truthfully transform any of these teams. But the final results of trades this season: Chase Young to San Francisco, Montez Sweat to the Bears, Leonard Williams going to the Seahawks. Again, those are the top of the list. Kevin Byard to Philadelphia. These are some of the more impact ones. Of course, Rasul Douglas going to the Bills as well. Donovan Peoples-Jones, I think they just lost Mosley, the return guy, and they need some speed threat over the top. Ezra at Cleveland going to the Jags. So Dobbs obviously going to Minnesota and going to lose one of the O-linemen that they have there protecting Kirk Cousins. Kentavious Street to the Falcons. McCole Hardman back to KC. These aren't all deadline deals. These are just overall the trades in May. Randy Gregory also went to San Fran. J.C. Jackson to New England. Chase Claypool to the Dolphins. Van Jefferson to Atlanta. Cam Akers to Minnesota. Again, none of these are true, I think, like, shocking moves. The Chase Young one, they didn't really get much for Chase Young, but he hasn't been the same player he was prior to the ACL tear. But playing alongside Nick Bosa, he draws a lot of attention. That might create, some sort of like a benefit for him because of how focused teams are going to be on stopping Nick Bosa. I think Chase Young's going to be able to take advantage of that. And you might see their pass rush step up even more and more and have to, simulate less pressure and rush with 4 with Young and Bosa and Gregory rotating in as well. I'm sure you could slide one of those guys inside on pass rushing downs as a 3-tech and let him wreak havoc. And then slide Gregory outside. You can put Gregory outside. Use Chase Young like in kind of a 3-tech spot or Bosa, however you want to do it. You certainly, be able to cause problems with guys like that. So, once again, there's a couple deals here or there that the Byard one, adding a safety. The Eagles know what they're trying to get after and where they need to add parts. Leonard Williams, a defensive lineman. I don't know if he's a true game changer, but it certainly helps the Seattle Seahawks team that with the injuries to the 49ers, they know that they have to make moves now, and adding to a pass rush, I think is. And just the defensive line as a whole, Leonard Williams really just all over. The Bears going for Montez Sweat, obviously trying to add to the pass rush, and they didn't really truthfully replaced Khalil Mack. They moved on from him. Not that Mack was a true game changer other than like his first year there. So, I mean, like that's more of like a long-term one as well, too. He's not a rental because what are the Bears doing this season? They're not winning. So, yeah. Raiders move on from McDaniels. They were part of the 3 down. Overall, this is the dysfunction, how they went down to the Lions. It looked like they had no fight in them, no cohesiveness, no connection. I'll go through the individual statistics when we get there. But, yeah, trade deadline, the Chase Young one stands out. The Leonard Williams one, too. But those are really the only – and Kevin Byard, not a bad secondary player. The Dobbs, obviously, there to right the ship. There's some guys that could make impacts for sure, but nothing that's truthfully game-breaking and I think incredibly shocking. So I'm going to stay away from like an individual breakdown of each. So we're going to go to NFL now. NFL 3 up, 3 down. And first 3 up team we have is the Jacksonville Jaguars. And I think overall they should be in the top 5 of your power rankings at this point. Because I think they've won like 6 games in a row it is now. Something along the lines of that. So they've won 5 games in a row, 6 overall. They had a tough loss to the Chiefs, loss to the Texans, which is where you started to think that things were kind of going to go sideways for this team. But then, rattling off 5 in a row, they beat a team that they're supposed to beat in the Falcons. Upset win over the Bills. What would be considered an upset win, really. Still a good, talented Bills roster. Beat the Colts, which they should have done. Beat the Saints, which I think in all reality they should have done at this point. Foster Moreau doesn't drop that. You might be in a different position, but overall, and then a Steelers team, they should have beat the Steelers team the way they did. You like to see more out of Trevor Lawrence, yes, but overall, I've still been pretty impressed with what the team's been able to do. He's been able to manage the game well. I think they have a balanced offense in terms of what they do running the football as well as what they're able to do throwing the football. They're kind of middle of the pack in both, but overall, I still think that in terms of like turnover differential, they have a positive differential in turnover, one of the top teams in terms of turnover differential. So not only do they force turnovers, they don't turn the ball over themselves. Defensively, I don't think they've been bad either. Again, they haven't been great defensively, but they haven't been terribly. They go towards the bottom in terms of total defense, but then scoring defense is where you really start to look and where scoring defense really matters. And while they're not like top notch in terms of scoring defense, they're still a solid squad. One of the better teams in the league. So I think with the positive turnover differential, you have Josh Allen off the edge for them. You have a top 10 quarterback in Trevor Lawrence. Okay, that's the formula. They added some O-line help. That's where I think they kind of lack. But overall, this is a team that, especially considering the weakness of what I think that division has, certainly can get themselves up there in home field advantage, and that changes things drastically and dramatically going forward. But overall, in terms of some of the top movers, what they've been able to do recently, I think that certainly elevates them as my top 3-up team. The Bengals following up the Jaguars. Joe Burrow, this is now a top 5 quarterback for sure. And Joe Burrow, again, something about those early season woes, but then turning it around as it comes around. And Joe Burrow has certainly flipped the script. And again, this is one of the most incredible it factor players here with the early season woes due to maybe some injury and maybe some just early they played a lot until late in the season recently, but they beat a banged up 49ers team. That's the only thing that worries me long term with this Bengals team is that they haven't really beaten anybody in the sense. I mean, the 49ers, yes, solid squad. Seahawks, yes, solid squad. How it went down in those games, but at the end of the day, all that matters is you are getting a W. I mean, they're competing in an incredibly difficult division considering the Steelers, but I don't know where their offense is going and quarterback situation there, health-wise, not ability-wise, because it seems like Matt Canada hasn't exactly been stellar for them, and that's been a question for them going forward. I mean, Ravens, looks like Lamar could very well be an MVP candidate, even though the stats don't stand out there. I think that in terms of his game management skills have wildly improved. And then the Browns defense, I don't think it's sustainable with the quarterback play that they're going to get, regardless of whether Deshaun's healthy or not. But overall, it's still a team that you're formally going to meet. So they haven't really done well within their division this season so far, so they're going to have to pick that up. But overall, I think this is it's an impressive win this week over this 49ers team, and I think that this Bills game coming up is certainly a big deal. It's gonna have a lot of playoff implications. I think home field implications, and once again, which it was last year, it's kind of like it's a rematch from one of the most crazy moments I think any of us have ever seen in professional sports, at least for me personally, since I've been on this planet. I think it's one of the most wild situations, maybe the most wild situation. I mean, the start of Season 5 was a strictly Damar Hamlin content, I should say. So we'll see what the future holds for the Bengals, but considering how they've been able to improve offensively, I think with the health of Burrow obviously improving along the way has been a big deal as they move towards the top 10 in terms of passing categories. I've liked the way the run game has been able to pick up as well, too. They're a top 5 rushing team in the NFL, which I think is a big thing in terms of being able to protect Joe Burrow, is being able to run the ball. So, I mean, like, there's pass pro, obviously, is different from run blocking. They have one of the better they're not too high. That was one of the better rush defenses. In terms of rushing per game themselves statistically, they don't rank that high. They're one of the better rush defending teams. They're lower there in terms of their defense is actually kind of bailed them out in a sense. I was looking at the wrong sheet. They had it labeled up wrong. But you can see how lately they have ticked it up. Defensively, they kind of held it down. I think they've been able to run the ball better recently, which is going to allow them to take better shots at play action and protect Burrow better and run more of a balanced offense. So I think a lot of their stats are inflated in the sense where if they aren't scoring as much in terms of higher scoring teams, it's because of how early on that Titans game certainly affects them in those statistics and the health of Joe Burrow. But overall, they're going to have to beat some really good teams down the stretch. But overall, they have moved up. I think one of the biggest moving teams and beating a team like the 49ers, even if banged up, is a big deal and worth note. So, final team for the 3-up, the Tennessee Titans. Tennessee Titans have been, I wouldn't even say up and down. They've just been down. But again, this is a Vrabel coach team. It's a gritty team. They're going to find a way. I think he's a gritty guy. I think that's how it goes. I mean, they had the loss to the Saints early. They were able to beat the Chargers, but then again, Staley, you don't really believe him. Lost to the Browns, really bad loss to the Browns. Big win versus the Bengals, and then tough loss to the Colts, the Ravens. They were able to beat the Falcons, but they don't just beat the Falcons in that game. It was the Will Levis show, right? Like, Will Levis finally gets a shot. I mean, Tannehill threw 2 touchdowns through the first 6 games of the season, right? in steps Will Levis and absolutely lights it up. Now, got to play in the short week. He's playing tomorrow night, and we'll see how he holds up there. But overall, I mean, 238 yards, 19 and 29, 4 touchdowns. He looked comfortable. Certainly comfortable. Was taking big shots at DeAndre Hopkins. Again, this is a guy where has certainly been criticized, has slipped in the draft past where he thought he was supposed to go, where everybody thought he was supposed to go. Of course, I mean they didn't really beat anyone in the Falcons team, but a win is a win in your debut, and he hung tight in there, and I think that it was the right move to go to Will Levis because you've already seen, while not much of Malik Willis, you've still seen him, and I think that like the eye test there is like, well, like, and fans in terms of that too, like you've seen what you have in Malik Willis, and if he wasn't able to show you any spark, then there's obviously a reason they drafted Will Levis. Like, you have to give it a shot. So they've been able to win at home, 3-1 at home, and they're gonna have to see what the future holds for them as they're going on the road for the next 3. So that's a tough part of the schedule. But it's the Steelers, Buccaneers, and Jaguars. So that Jaguars one could prove to be big if Will Levis does decide to go on a run here. But obviously, dropping into the second round has something to prove, and it's certainly impressive to see what he was able to do in that debut game. Can he repeat it? I don't know, but I certainly think that with the way their defense has played overall, offensively they've certainly struggled. I think defensively, again, you can only do so much defensively, and you can only do so much defensively when your offense really isn't doing too well at the same time. So I think, again, those are numbers that are kind of inflated based off of how much of the offense they haven't been getting. But, in terms of, turning the ball over as well, too, they haven't been exactly stellar in that department. They have a negative turnover differential. They're not really getting takeaways, and they threw a lot of interceptions early on in the season. So fumbled a couple times as well. So, I mean, again, you got to take care of the ball better. But if you have a guy who's truthfully out there slinging it comfortably, making plays the way that Will Levis was, I think that that's one of the reasons why they should be one of the biggest movers this week in terms of how you look at the season going forward. And that division's kind of wide open, right? You have a rookie quarterback, and you have the Colts on a backup quarterback, and then you have the Jags, who, again, like, they're one of the movers in terms of like how I think they've played overall in managing games. But considering you should have, if you're going to play at that level, I think they're a well-coached bunch. And now they have a guy who's aggressive and able to take shots like that, and I think that totally transforms them. Again, this is a question of is it sustainable? I don't know, but in terms of a week to week, I think that moves them up way, way higher. Like, if Tannehill beat them in like a 10-7 game, I wouldn't be talking about these Titans going to 3-4. But considering how Will Levis did it, I certainly think that elevates them. So in terms of the 3 down, the negative, right, the teams that have shifted down, the LA Rams. The LA Rams, like, where have we gone since the Super Bowl, right? Hasn't really worked out for them since that Super Bowl. It's unfortunate how it's gone down. Stafford's injured again, and I don't want to kick them while they're down. But they've been bad. They've been flat out bad. They've been in some close games, some games that, if they swing a different way, we might be having a different conversation. Like the Niners game, like the Bengals game. The loss to the Eagles as well, but they beat a Cardinals team they were supposed to beat. But then a tough loss to the Steelers, blowing that lead and then blown out by the Cowboys. Tough to go on the road, but that little road stint with the Eagles, Cardinals, and Steelers, you'd like to see them pick up 2 or 3 there. They were, the close one with the Bengals on the road and a big win for them. Beating the Seahawks early, it's tough. Puka Nakua's obviously a 5th-round pick, so obviously that's worked out for them. But now Stafford's going to be out for a period of time. They're going to be going to the backup. And how they just they've never shown that same spark, right? They've never shown that same spark since that period of time. I mean, still offensively, they're still up there in terms of total yards per game, in terms of points per game, not ranking that high, which, again, that comes down to just some of the red zone playmaking. Of course, the Cooper Kupp injury was a thing early on in the season, and still now they're going to have to deal with Stafford. So that's why I see them moving down. I think injuries more or less too. Again, they haven't been able to get they haven't had that decisive edge in those close games. That's the biggest difference. We haven't seen the same dominant Aaron Donald. They overspent a lot, right? So the cap was taken up by a lot of guys. They haven't had the cap to make moves for certain playmakers. They haven't drafted as well, and they haven't had that same edge. And certainly another loss, the way that they did it in such a fashion to the Cowboys, who are a team who are kind of known for playing down to competition. They show up and blow you out of the water. Like, that's like a game you expect Dallas to really kind of put their foot down, and you would hope that the Rams would hang in. Like, the Rams want that game and want to hang in that game and still get, throttled by the Cowboys. So, I mean, it's a bad loss, and we'll see what they're able to do with the upcoming schedule. They traveled to Green Bay, and it's a Green Bay team that they should beat and should be able to keep in the conversation, but they have a backup quarterback, but it's against Jordan Love. I mean, I still think that's a game that the Rams should win on paper, but then you have the Seahawks, you're at the Cardinals. It's the Cardinals are a team, even with a backup, that you should be able to beat, even if Kyler Murray's not back. I think there's a lot of dysfunction there. Then you have the Browns, so it's backup quarterback. Then, the Ravens, Stafford, we'll see when he's able to make the return, if it's going to be worth a note. Then Ravens, Commanders, Saints, that Ravens game could be big, depending on what they do in these next couple. I mean, that's looking well forward, but they have a weaker close of the schedule. So I mean, realistically, they could hang around, right? I mean, but again, I haven't seen it from this bunch, and that's why they're part of my 3 down. Again, we've already touched upon the Raiders, but just they're part of the 3 down too, and like I said, just bad loss to the Lions, a couple bad losses overall, and just don't want to continue to kick McDaniels and the whole coaching staff. We'll see how they decide to move forward, but overall, the Raiders have not. This is on McDaniels. I mean, McDaniels and the GM Ziegler, yes, they go down and are fired, obviously, yes, but again, they made their picks to get their quarterback, and the quarterback hasn't been on the field, and we know that injuries were an issue with him, and it just has never come together, and obviously it's created kind of a toxic culture there. So we'll see how they're able to respond throughout the season, but certainly not seeing anything from them, and they have been quite the disaster. My last team that's been selling off parts here, sold at the deadline, and they've been in some tight battles with one of the best teams in football, not just this year, but in recent years. They're getting they won the first 2 games of the season, then won the 3-game skid, were able to battle back. It's a bad loss to the Giants the week before. It's the Washington Commanders. I mean, Sam Howell has actually performed very, very well. I mean, overall, he's throwing the ball very well, almost 400 passing yards in this past week. Like, I don't think they were expecting much from Sam Howell, all things considered, but they're actually getting good numbers from him. He's going for over 2,000 yards this season. He can move in the pocket. He can move around. He has a rushing touchdown, but he's completed over 66% of his throws. He's turned the ball over quite a bit. He's been like the most sacked quarterback in football. But I'm not terribly upset with what Sam Howell's done for this Commander squad, but yeah, selling is the right thing to do because they just don't have the future. I mean, you're traveling to New England now. You got to play the Patriots. Travel to Seahawks. You have the Giants at home. You should be beating the Giants at home. The Giants are a dumpster fire. But then you have Cowboys, Dolphins, Rams. That could be a meat grinder, and a tough Jets team defensively. I mean, I've been kind of impressed with some of the throws Howell was making, and there's some games here that they should have won. Really, I think that Eagles game on the road, they hung tough in, but then you lose to the Bears the way that they did, and losses to the Bears and Giants. No, those are the teams you should be beating. Like, if you're hanging tough with the Eagles, you should be able to respond. But again, don't have the capacity to emotionally respond to a tough loss to Philly. You go and lose to a team who I think you're better than in the Bears, and again, it's just they just don't have. Again, that could be coaching too. I could see that them moving on from the coach as well. They're one of the. Again, I've been impressed with Sam Howell overall, and their offense hasn't been terrible. The Commanders' offense, I mean, could certainly be better. You look at the defense, though, too. Like Rivera being a defensive style head coach, they're one of the worst defenses in the league. So again, they've maybe some of that's inflated with Howell because they've had to throw and do so much through the air, trailing late. They have young running backs, young pieces, McLaurin. Again, they need that system needs a culture shock, and I feel bad because he's been, trying. I mean, he's the most sacked quarterback in football, so being able to throw as much as he has and being sacked that much, being able to hang in there, just want to try and keep him healthy. I don't know if he's a franchise guy, but it almost seems like it's like, considering where you got him and the capital that you had to give up for him, like, hey, this isn't bad, but there's some games that they should have won. This could be a playoff. I think the Commanders could be a playoff team, just with a different coaching staff, but we'll see. When new staffs come in, they move on from players who think differently. certainly selling off parts like they did, and that loss on top of it certainly puts them as one of the teams moving down in the power rankings. That's my final 3-down team. So now we go to the NBA and James Harden finally getting dealt. We'll get into a World Series update as well. But the James Harden trade, it's a big win by the 76ers getting rid of him, right? I mean, I said it in the previous podcast, and teams that are overrated that we should not consider anything about. It was the 76ers. Now it's this. I'll just change that to the Clippers until they had moved off of James Harden. I didn't see them doing anything serious, like, truthfully. So again, he's a 10-time All-Star. They traded James Harden, PJ Tucker, and Petroshev to the Clippers for Marcus Morris, who replaces Tucker, and Covington, who are two Covington formerly with the 76ers. Those are guys that can wing defenders, kind of swing defenders like Tucker, Batum as well, KJ Martin, a first-round pick, 2 second-round picks, and then a 20-29 pick swap, and an additional first-round pick from the Thunder. I mean, they have so many, they should just start handing those out at this point. So, again, like, you're not missing any. You're getting more role players to surround Joel Embiid. You have now the cap room. You have space for Tyrese Maxey to grow. This is exactly what I wanted the 76ers to do. I think this is an absolute win for them because getting rid of James Harden is a win in itself. So being able to not only do that, but get it for some serious role players that'll be able to help out, I think it's an absolute W for them. And I think getting him out of there, he's a team cancer. You see him wearing the fat suit in Houston, like how often he's requesting for trades from Brooklyn. Like, this guy is not a good teammate. At least wouldn't it be? I'm not in those locker rooms, like, but you start to kind of realize more and more he's just not a good teammate. He's not a guy that you want around in your locker room, and I think he's a career underachiever and a team cancer, and you just don't want him in your locker room. So now you have the Clippers with a team of, Kawhi Leonard's 1-1, but realistically that's a team of underachievers as well too. So just add that in there. I mean, maybe we're so heavy on winning rings nowadays, but I don't know. I see that as a team of underachievers, and James Harden, I would be happy to have James Harden off my roster if I'm the 76ers. Now you have the freedom to go make a move for another star if it comes to be that way, but you might not even need it if Maxey steps into the role the way that I think he will with Embiid and these role players. I mean, I don't know if you're a player, Ray. I mean, Joel Embiid's an MVP. I mean, again, we'll see how it all plays out, but I think this is an absolute win by the 76ers. It's an absolute loss by the Clippers. They give up a lot. They give up a lot of their bench. They give up a lot of capital, and they bring in a guy who I don't think puts them any closer to winning a championship. I think in terms of his personality, it takes you further away from it. So that's my thoughts on the James Harden trade. It was something I touched upon before. We just didn't have an official, obviously, report of it, but like I said, I didn't see anything serious from the 76ers until they got rid of him. Now I can see that they're going to be better than what I thought they were going to be. And the Clippers, like, I don't think anything of them. Like, they could have been an underrated team as well with Kawhi and Paul George. Maybe you had a different piece, but now they would Russell Westbrook too. I mean, he's an underrated player in the NBA now in reality, but if he's in a specific role. But again, I don't like it. I don't like it for the Clippers. I don't like anybody. I mean, somebody's going to have to deal with it, right? I thought it was Houston who was going to deal with it again, but I didn't really see anything happening for them anyways. So, yeah, I think that it's an absolute win for the 76ers to move on from James Harden, and an absolute loss to take that cancer on if you're the LA Clippers. Now we got the World Series where it really could all end tonight. This is a Rangers team that was below 500 on the road throughout this season, but is now undefeated on the road in the postseason. Have certainly bottled up some energy. They are one game away from in a gentleman's sweep, taking their first ever World Series. Again, Corey Seager continuing to do damage. Semyon was big, but Seager just continuing to dominate this postseason. I saw a thing comparing his stats to Reggie Jackson and that he was outproducing Reggie Jackson in the month of October. Of course, the MLB playoffs are a little bit different now, the structure in terms of how many games you played, so that helps inflate that statistic. So not reading too much into that one, but yeah, Rangers demolished the Diamondbacks. I don't think this one, I mean, they did try to make a run late, but I don't think this one is completely as close as it would seem on the scoreboard. So obviously, overall, one game away. They're one game away, and the Rangers undefeated could finish the postseason undefeated on the road. We've seen it before, though. We've seen the Diamondbacks come back from the dead. They're a resilient bunch. Myself and Andrew Winnie obviously talked about it on our World Series preview. But I mean both these teams have been resilient the entire playoffs, but the Diamondbacks maybe a little bit more of the resilient of the bunch, but Semien, some big-time players, Seager obviously doing his thing, and my goodness, what a series he's had, what a postseason he's had. No Adolis, Garcia, no problem. Scherzer went down with an injury in Game 3, didn't matter. They still come out with a win here in Game 4. So certainly impressive in that regard. And now you have Nate Eovaldi on the bump tonight, who is 4-0 in this postseason, which is certainly impressive. Dealt with an injury at a point during the season, but considering these playoffs and what he's been able to do in these playoffs, incredibly dominant. Obviously, having pitched on Friday, now going to go back at it, trying to come up. Well, the past Friday, trying to respond to that in the sense of he wants to do better. But this is a guy who absolutely loves the big moment. Pitched in Game 1. He's going to have his opportunity once again. I think they want to take care of it here as well, because you don't want to be in that moment where you're running down of your pitching depth, right? Because now Scherzer's injured, trying to deal with that. I mean, to think that this is a Rangers team that still doesn't have Jacob deGrom is super impressive. But Gallen's going to have to really step up. Zach Gallen's really going to have to show up in this one. 17 wins on the season. Didn't have a quality start, but he did take the loss. But he did pitch in a losing effort to the Rangers in Game 1 of the series, and wasn't really lights out against the Phillies either. This postseason really hasn't been incredibly, I would say, polite to him in terms of how he's pitched overall. So postseason, he has a ERA over 5 and a WHIP of 1.5. So it hasn't been the ideal postseason run for Zach Gallen being the leading of that staff. I mean, they have Merrill Kelly do what he did. I don't think the Rangers want to see Merrill Kelly again. So, work it out for both of them. Eovaldi was a stud in the postseason with the Red Sox in both of their postseason runs, and continues to do the same thing for the Rangers so far this postseason. Overall in his career, it certainly has been impressive. But yeah, postseason so far, 5 starts for Gallen, 2 wins, 2 losses, and then obviously a no decision. Walks have been an issue. 1.4 walks, strikeouts per walk ratio there, a little bit. So, I mean, the Diamondbacks are certainly going to have to pick up their defense as well. Again, this is a big start. This is the biggest start of the season. This is a guy that they've relied on all season in Zach Gallen, but Eovaldi's been in these moments before too, and he does not like to shy away from him. I mean, big strikeout pitcher, Zach Gallen. He's going to, over 200 strikeouts so far on the season. He's certainly going to have to quiet the bats in that way, and have to find a way to quiet Corey Seager, because what a series and what a postseason he's been having. So I don't know. I like Eovaldi in the big moment. I picked the game to go 6, Gentlemen's in 5. I really don't think the Rangers want to see Merrill Kelly. But is Zach Gallen due for a good start? Time will only tell. I'm still taking the Rangers. It seems like the momentum's too much, and this whole undefeated road postseason would be quite the piece on a resume there. Quite the little bullet point to the season overall for the Texas Rangers. So I expect them to take it tonight and take it to their first World Series championship ever, and it will be down to, I believe, 5 or 4 teams. 5 teams. Be down to 5 teams now that haven't won a World Series title. But yeah, I'm definitely taking the Texas Rangers to win the ball game tonight. They do not want to see Merrill Kelly again. I don't know who would. So Rangers to win it. But I appreciate everybody that tuned into today's podcast. We'll be back sometime next week. I'm going to try and get my picks out there somewhere at some point. That is all the time we have today. Be sure to check out the Fumble Rooski podcast as well, where I featured on that as well. So technically it's my second part of the week, but just not, my own. I will continue trying to get my picks out there. Recently won my pool, so continued to pick well on the season, but I have to find a way to put them out there and update everybody. So once again, I appreciate everybody for tuning in. Be sure to follow on social media at Rufus Rundown, and then for TikTok, it's the Rufus Rundown. My personals and my business social medias be down below. We're on the call for Holy Cross soon enough as well, too, back on ESPN Plus, I imagine, and NESN Plus coming up in the near future. But once again, stay tuned for that. Follow the social medias to stay up to date with that. Appreciate everybody for tuning in. But for now, you'll be Rufus signing off.